Why, good morning, Mike. Are you well?
Ravinder, how are you, mate?
Absolutely superb. It's a real pleasure to be talking to you this morning. And yeah, I think everything's going live. Thank you for the opportunity regarding the whole test call thing as well. But I just thought hopefully I'll be sort of sorted by now and everything. Hold on a
That's
second.
cool.
I'm moving my hands over here. I'm just seeing. There's a delay.
Seeing yourself move. It's good to be here, mate. It's good to see you. It's lovely to have the opportunity to come back on RadiAsian.
Oh,
I
thanks.
really I really appreciate the opportunity again, mate. So thank you for having me back. It's kind of nice. It's kind of like I get the opportunity to kind of just kick back, just sit and like with the Aurora cast, it's like it's weird, isn't it? Whenever you're sort of doing an interview, you're kind of like it's I don't know, it's a different feeling. It's a different feeling.
Well, to be honest, you're the talent, and like if you look at your repertoire and all the hard work you've put in over the years, it's just that's something worth discussing and educating the viewers, or and while I'll try and extract the audio element of this and use that for the RadiAsian server as well, because
Okay, cool.
yeah, because many musicians want to step across to um, the world of acting and film, and they may want to enter the world of film score from a sonic point of view. So I think it's very very first things first. How are you feeling this morning?
It's weird. I've been doing this crazy thing. Like, obviously, we're still in the lockdown over here in the UK, and I've been doing this crazy thing where I've kind of been going to bed super early and getting up super early, and that's very strange for me. Normally I'm a real sort of night owl, and I'm up till 2, 3 in the morning working on tracks or whatever else. So it's been weird, kind of almost getting up at a time I'd normally go to bed. It's very bizarre, but yeah, I'm doing very well, mate. I was up about probably 20 to 5 this morning, and coffee, get into the studio, try and sort of start making some tracks and try and kind of get going. Now I'm here at 11 talking to you, so I'm pretty chilled, mate. To be honest, you've caught me kind of in a nice chill part of the day. I've done some creative stuff, and now I'm just chilling. So yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good.
Can I ask you about coffee, right? Because I know this.
Coffee, okay.
Okay, what it is as a presenter. Uh, Before the interview, I normally have a coffee, and I've already just boiled the kettle and everything ready for that coffee. So but the thing is, do you have the crash, and how do you deal with the crash after the, does that sound dumb?
No, no, not at all. I think it's an interesting question because I think a lot of people in our sphere, or a lot of people in general, like the coffee kind of seems to be a real thing. I don't remember it being so prevalent as a younger man. I don't remember it being like everyone sort of jacked up on coffee constantly as being a thing. But it definitely for me it's definitely a vice. It's normally the first thing I wake up, I'll have like two, back to back. So yeah, I definitely do get a crash. I try to kind of stop drinking any coffee from kind of like, I'd say I try to give myself a good 7 hours before I'm going to go to sleep, to just like get it out of my system so I can relax. But I've got my I like my Breaking Bad. I've got my Heisenberg.
You got a drug operation going on. I love it. I love it.
There's no point hiding it. You know what I mean?
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I love it. I love it. I love it. Because for the last few interviews, right, what I've been doing, I've been having this sort of mad coffee, and well, it's like a mocha, 2 spoons of the Aldi, whatchamacallit. Everything's all Aldi sponsored, because when you work for RadiAsian, money's something you rarely ever see, but you get great quality. So this, I managed to get hold of the old batch, which is before they've modified. Sometimes they modify something for the better, but they actually bastardize it. And the medium roast Colombian. So I have 2 spoons of this one, and 1 spoon of this one, and chuck it in there. But it's just a crash. And normally around 2 hours in, after that, I've crashed. I'm doing that during a radio show, especially on a Saturday morning. So I had to ask you about the coffee, because you're doing Aurora cast and everything as well. So I think it's just, would you prefer a stable level of energy all the way through, where you sort of mellowed out for the whole show, or would you prefer the mad crazy nut job for the mad hour and a half, mad 2 hours, then he suddenly crashed, and it's
I think yeah, that it's strange because sometimes you listen back to especially when it comes to the podcast stuff. Sometimes you listen back to stuff you've done, and you can just tell you're jacked up. You're like, like, and the guest probably thinking, is this guy like, is he okay? Especially if it's someone you don't know or someone you haven't interviewed before. And other times you can tell you're a bit more sort of chilled out. I think in general a more level approach to your day is probably recommended. Because I find as well, if you've had too many cups and then you try and do something creative, it's just, especially if it's like for the film work, if it's quite like a delicate scene or a slow kind of scene or something like that, and you're sort of it just do you know what I mean? It just doesn't work, man. It doesn't work. But it's interesting. You definitely I've listened back to some of the podcasts, and I'm like, wow, I was probably thinking I was taking speed rather than coffee,
well, I've got to say this because the defense mechanism of the coffee plant. So, should any animal wander into the plantations, what have you, when they nibble on the leaves and everything, it's bewilderment and also confusion. So that's what it is. So I realised I thought I'd be monitoring my own levels, but I am going to try and put together a thingy because it just feels natural to be sipping on something whilst doing the interview. Now, you may think you had an easy ride coming on my show, right? But in terms of relaxing, but I did. I think I'm going to be asking you quite a few questions about how you started your career, the technical side of things. So the viewers can learn, a bit more about you and. Almost like, I wouldn't say it's a to me it's like a mystery world, the world of film score. Yeah, it is as to what you guys do, how you're doing it, whether you're involved in Foley sound and stuff like that, and your microphone. So I guess I'll kick off by asking the first question. What made you enter the world of film score?
So I think it's a weird one. I think I'd always loved films, and I think sound had always been a big part of that. I think the combining of images with sound was something that kind of struck me quite early on in life, but I wasn't really aware of it. It's one of those things that it only really makes sense when you look back and kind of join those dots. But I can remember, I think, like watching Fantasia and like hiding behind the sofa when the devil comes out, and sort of, all those sorts of things, and film being quite it had a profound effect on me, I suppose. So my dad was big on tech and gadgets. He had to have all the latest gadgets. And I remember he had it's still actually in my front room now. He gave it to me as a 21st birthday present. It's a Yamaha kind of Pro Logic system from like sort of 94, 95. So I experienced sort of surround sound in the home, if you like, which was I feel quite blessed to have had that opportunity. And I think that kind of filling the room with that much sound and to the images with the films we've watched and things like that, I think it, remembering Gladiator in 2000, those like opening battle scenes, or like Saving Private Ryan, or like all the Gatling guns going off, and the music alongside that, I think it's kind of like the journey I was taken on through film, because of, like you say, the Foley and the sound effects and the music. I found it so immersive, but I wasn't kind of aware of it. So going sort of into uni, where I was sort of playing in bands and wanting to be a live sound engineer. So that was kind of my entry to university, and I was listening to a lot of sort of heavy metal and rock and stuff like that back then when I first went to uni, and I was playing in a metal band. And it was a module of the course that I did, which was about film sound. And I just fell in love with the process. I wasn't very good at the sort of. I remember getting we had to kind of put Foley over like some scenes from Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. So I was sort of in the woods dropping weights like on leaves and stuff with like it wasn't even a Zoom recorder. It was a really cheap like Elise's handheld recorder, no microphones, nothing. And then sort of coming back and syncing it to the film. And I suppose it wasn't that we then had to start writing bits of music. So one of the briefs was Menace. We had to write like we had to write like a tense kind of Menace scene. So it was it was clashing two chords together and things like that, and kind of like a quite a dissonant kind of way. And yeah, I had a friend at the time who was sort of studying film, so he was making like a short film called Francis. And we kind of just ended up like collaborating. I bought like a really cheap like entry level sound. Well, it wasn't cheap, but it was like an entry level sort of orchestral sound pack. And I managed to actually, my lecturer and they allowed me to submit actually that film for the Menace section of the uni brief, which I really appreciated because it kind of sent me down that route. And I think at that point it sort of it became quite clear to me that's kind of where I wanted to go, and I wanted to work to picture. And I know what you're saying, to kind of like, this is probably a really long answer, but I hear what you're saying in terms of like, I think film sound can get quite messy because it's like, what part of it is music, what part of it is sound design, what part of it is ambient sound design, what part do you start accenting actual things that are happening in the scene with music or with sounds, and the lines can get very blurry where you're doing music but you're kind of also you're commenting on like the size of the picture. If it's a sci-fi, or like if it's got these big worlds, it's like how you come at the music, it kind of shapes the world. And it's a very strange place to I find to kind of exist in a film world, because it's constantly changing and there's no real definition to. Obviously we've got kind of like blueprints, if you like, from the big blockbusters and the whatever else, which you know, at one point I might be able to do a blockbuster. At the moment I stick on my indies, which is a world I love. So yeah, I hope that's kind of answered the question. It's a big broad thing to answer, I suppose, in many ways. You know, it's a weird one.
Wow. Yeah, I apologize for hitting you with a multifaceted sort of question, but I also gave you scope to basically say anything you wanted, and you've done it very, very well. I noticed you picked up on being scared of Fantasia as a young child, and if you look at the actual score, Night on Bald Mountain, so that's an old 1940 film, that puts the fear of God. And if you actually look into the use of this particular soundtrack, they would have used that soundtrack during Satanic Black Mass.
Seriously?
Yeah.
So there's the power, because and that's the thing. I don't think it was because the visuals, you know, it was like 30s Disney animation, you know. Obviously, while it was scary, I do think it's that it was the sound of that. Is it Hall of the Mountain King, or I can't remember. Is that the track? You know, it's like it was definitely the kind of like dun 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 dun, and then you've got all these sort of bat flying things, and I'm like, oh Christ, I'm getting behind the sofa.
Yeah, man. And Night on Bald Mountain. So
That's
what
the
it
one.
was, I went on this mad sort of tangent a couple of years ago where I analysed the use of frequencies to instill various emotions in people, such as a horror film and fear. So then there's also, you know, that tying that to jump scare scenes where you have the silent bit beforehand and then bam, they'll hit you with the sound. So you know, how do you implement? How would you go from the keyboard to instilling a fear of the crow? Hold on a second, there's crows outside. That's the sign of imminent death for me, isn't it?
You're talking dark stuff, and now you got crows outside. Brilliant.
Oh God, this is nuts. Yeah. What I was gonna say, how do you instill that emotion in terms of whether it's fear, joy, you know, whatever emotion it is? Do you have like a set sort of sound banks which you turn to, like, right, I've got these particular strings and that's going to put the fear of God into the... Because I listened to some of your music during the first interview we did, which was an audio only one. Was it with you part of Iceni? Is that right?
Yeah. So we did some kind of ambient tracks back in the day. I should say Rick did. The vocalist is the founder of Iceni. He did kind of there was strange. We were talking about this the other day on the Aurora cast. I've Rick on, and we were talking about that, where the idea behind those tracks was almost like a his vision for it was to take you into the album was if you picture a bird kind of flying from the ocean and then it goes across the land. So you hear like rivers, you hear horses, you hear different kind of animals that would have been about reflected in that time of kind of old England and stuff like that. So he was doing kind of soundscapes um, for the intros, but the outros were often a bit darker and it was a bit more focused on kind of like the shamans and sorcery, if you like, like smelting iron and all those sorts of things would have been seen as quite kind of majestic, if you like, or
Yes.
they would have been scared of it, like back in the day, that kind of stuff, and sword from the stone and all those kind of like mythological things we hear about. So there was definitely like a while there was a with Iceni, it was especially the second demo, it was about Boudica and kind of like battles, and it was ferocious. It was extreme metal, with using that kind of ferociousness of her tribe, I suppose, against the Romans as a kind of source of for the music, and the story background. But there was definitely a majestic side of that music that Rick really pushed forward, and I really enjoyed those tracks as well. So that it's interesting there. I like the dots you've created there, because it's I kind of doing it again, like it's trying to kind of look for some sort of old footage of like medieval and almost like do that what Rick did myself, and sort of as a soundscape, perhaps in the lead into an album or into something else. So it's still coming from a filmic place, I'm still kind of film is definitely like it's like my I don't think I'm very good at just kind of coming to the sequencer and writing a track or writing a piece of music, or whether that be sound design or whether that be music. I feel like the film helps to guide me, and it helps to kind of it works as not only my source of inspiration, but it's also like the grading of the picture can have an effect on me depending on what textural place I want to use, which kind of comes in to answer your question about like the sound libraries.
Yes.
Because I do have kind of like I think every kind of modern day film composer now uses the computer, and libraries is like their kind of source of inspiration. We'll have go-to libraries. In terms of the moods, I think it's just kind of finding the right key. Like this morning before I was talking to you, I'm doing this thing around sleep, which I might come on to talk to you about later.
Yes.
And at the moment, I'm just trying to find the right key for it, the right feel, for the progressions I want to use as like the basis of that piece. So yeah, the sound has a lot to do with that, but it's also where are we looking at tonally, so yeah, that definitely comes into it. I suppose I have go-to chords I like for specific things, or even kind of go-to octaves, for specific kind of things I want to do. But that depends as well. If you've got a male speaking, you tend to go slightly higher. If you've got a female speaking, you go slightly lower. I try to mix, like as I write, thinking about where's the dialogue going to sit and what's going on.
Wow, brilliant. Good answer there, Mike, to my dodgy question. But it's just, but for me, okay. I think we hit it from different angles. See, in terms of sound and emotion. Like me, I go through. You have professional library banks and stuff, don't you? You had the Vienna thing. Is that right? So
I use a whole Vienna. So I use it used to be East-West, Quantum Leap's East-West libraries. They were like all over the place back in the day. And when I was kind of like come into this world, it was all Quantum Leap East-West stuff. And then it's moved to a lot of people now are using Spitfire or orchestral tools. The Spitfire stuff I think is popular because it does sound great, and there's so many sounds they've made, but they record them all in like the same hall. It's all recorded mostly in Erlinghurst in London, which is the same place that Hans Zimmer will use those sorts of composers. So you kind of get his sound purely based on their recording it in that room. And I do think that's kind of, it does mean that they're not perfect for everything. It's got to be said. They tend to while they've kind of given you the pack, you've got the dry options, you've got the tree mics, you've got the surround mics, and you can kind of dial it in and out. it does kind of shape you within that place, which I think is where orchestral tools, for instance, coming out of Berlin, they've kind of got a completely different sound as well. But it does mean that merging these libraries, if you're using like all Spitfire,
Yes.
I find they tend to work because they're recorded in the same room. Where sometimes mixing different libraries, it does work, but you do occasionally find that just the characteristics of where the room's been recorded, you might lose power, they slightly go out of phase, or something just happens with the merging of those rooms that doesn't quite work. But I mean, the sampling world is incredible. The way it's kind of, I mean, just people are doing their own. My buddy Grant Borland, he's just started a new company. Him and his mate are making kind of these like ambient sounds and kind of big impacts, and they're scraping metal stuff, and like they're just going crazy, you know. And the amount of stuff that's coming out of the audio world now, I think with the way the computers have developed, and computers are just so fast now. As soon as we got solid state hard drives, the world just went nuts, you know. And you find that you can put your computers under a hell of a lot of strain now and get some quite realistic results. That said, I still think you can't beat players. You're never going to be able to beat players, but you know, in terms of getting demos together, or you know, getting what I would call satisfactory sounding scores, especially for the independents and stuff like that, they work fine. You know, you can really get a good starting point, and then obviously if you get a bigger budget, then you know you can record some players and you can replace your MIDI parts, if you like, with actual real players.
Absolutely brilliant. Because for me, in terms of sound banks and sound libraries, etc., like, I'm not in the film world, but I had to do it as in music school. I had a choice as game or film. I thought I'll go with the film for the moment. But I knew my banks within my Korg keyboards, and I just knew where things were. So I made like a huge list of sounds and what I could turn to. Downloaded the thing from Korg and anyway, so I knew. But you're lucky. You mentioned powerful computers. I've got a very archaic, old. You know, I'm using right now. Is it a 12-year-old machine to do a lot of work on it, and we don't have SSDs over here. We're literally running two quick for their day 7200 RPM or 64 megabyte cache buffer drives as a RAID 0 stripe. So
got ya.
That's what I'm used to doing. So we were considering upgrading to this whole SSD, get the old Mac Pro 3.1 upgraded to an SSD system with a PCI Express sort of thing. I was going to buy that yesterday actually, but ended up buying something else instead. But yeah, what I wanted to get at is okay, so your computer is super duper powerful. If I'm correct, do you have the trash can Mac Pro?
So yeah, so I started with the same system pretty much as you. I got the old, what they call the cheese grater Mac Pro, and then I upgraded that quite substantially. So that shipped, I think, with 3 gig of. I think it had 6 gig of RAM, and it had 1 terabyte as an old 7200 drive, as you're talking about. I think I put I think they were called Black Caviar drives from Western Digital or something like that back in the day. That were like the fastest you could get in terms of those drives. I still got it. It's still down here, and I do occasionally use it if I get a particularly big project and my system starts struggling. I can do like a MIDI over LAN setup through Vienna Ensemble, so I can send MIDI to the other machine to say trigger some drums, and it sends the audio back, and it takes the processing load away from my main system. So I still have got it, but that ended up I think I took it up to 48 gigabytes of RAM. Which it didn't like. It overheated when I did that. So I think right now it's sitting at 32 gigs of RAM because for some reason it didn't like the 48. There was something wrong with the configuration. And they're all SSD hard drives in there. But other than that, I haven't modded. There's no cards or anything in that. And then I bought it's still old, man. It's 2013. The trash can Mac Pro. And I'm running a 12 core in that with 64 gigs of RAM. And that seems, to be fair, you know, I've kind of had a little bit of a I think everyone goes through this. You get into the industry and you spend thousands and thousands of pounds on all this gear and all these sound banks and all this stuff. And then I think you reach a point where you're kind of like, do you know what? I want some return out of this stuff. So I must admit, I buy probably like 1 or 2 libraries a year, and if I had a project, I tend to buy a library now. For instance, if I've got a project that specifically needs that pack, whereas I know a lot of guys will just buy libraries all day. I don't do that. Anymore. I did do that. I spent years spending money. So that's the current setup. Is the one Mac Pro. And I do everything pretty much within that box. But yeah, if projects get a bit out of hand, I've noticed the latest Pro Tools seems to be running very well, and the Logic's fine. Although I've dipped out, I tend to sit in Pro Tools all the time now. But yeah, that machine's been off. It's been pretty much just the one system. So for now, it's working. It's working well.
Wow, bro. Wow. Okay, that'll lead me into the next question. You'll never ever come over to the dark side of Nuendo, I'd imagine. You never know, but you're a hardcore Pro Tools guy. I think that's what you started on in college. Is that right? Or uni?
So yeah, kind of. I mean, the first DAW or digital audio workstation that I used was Audition, and perhaps before that, believe it or not, was Dance EJ.
Wow. Wow.
I remember using Dance EJ back in the day when I was really excited about it. I remember like getting off the bus and being excited to get back home to sort of. I mean, Dance EJ was weird because they just gave you a bunch of samples as like coloured blocks, and you drag them and build a track in this kind of like makeshift sampler. But I suppose that was my first like thing with music. And then again, my buddy Rick Iceni, he kind of got me a dodgy copy of Audition. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I can remember just sort of, I think I was using some Sound Blaster sound card on a Windows machine right back in the day. Sort of plugging guitars in through the line in. Like completely distorted on even from input. And I can just remember being obsessed with church reverb. Everything had church reverb on it, like the highest wetness as possible. But I did kind of write. I wrote at least some riffs. I played the guitar in, and at the time he showed me as well. What we would do was he showed me how to basically program like drum loops in Propeller Heads Reason.
Yeah.
And then I'd export the WAV out of the audio out basically from the MIDI in just blocks, and then record my crappy guitar parts to it. And then I didn't really touch any of it for years. That was probably. I'm gonna say that was 2005.
Yeah.
When I was using that, and then when I went to university, strangely that's when I had to buy my Mac. I didn't have a Mac before then. I was always Windows guy, and they were like, "You need a Mac for the course," and I was like, "Okay." So I went and got my Mac. And it's strange how I bought Logic, launched it, and just didn't get on with it. I got Pro Tools, installed it, and then I think I got like I bought like a kind of like a training pack for Pro Tools.
Yeah.
That took you through the menu system and creating tracks and basic editing and key commands and stuff like that. And I bought one of those keyboards that had like all the different markings actually on the keyboard itself for the commands.
Yes.
And I started doing that before I went to uni because I didn't want to turn up on a course and I didn't know anything at all. I'm like that. I like to be a bit prepared. So, and then like I said, I think by the time I got that film in my second year on the film course, because I've been used to Pro Tools, because we've been in the studio, we've been recording bands, we've been primarily using Pro Tools, even though I could use Logic at that point because we'd had modules we had to work on in Logic. Because Pro Tools have been sort of what I was used to, I just ran with it. So I just put the film in Pro Tools and just started using MIDI and scoring in Pro Tools. And everyone thought I was crazy because Pro Tools had this sort of, you don't do MIDI in Pro Tools, it's only for audio sort of strange vibe about the software. And I don't know why, because it always worked very well for me. And I think nowadays it's got a bit more, they've changed the look and they've sort of like expanded it out and people are now doing a lot more MIDI in it.
Yes.
But yeah, I was using Pro Tools to score films and do film work, like for yonks, like way before way before some of the other guys. They were sort of in Logic. Now Cubase, I installed a I know you're talking about Nuendo, which is like the granddad, if you like, of or the dad, if you like, of Cubase.
Yeah.
Now I installed it. I got a trial of it, and I actually liked it. I enjoyed the way that the folders. One big thing for me was folders, which now Pro Tools can do. I liked the way that as you were playing the notes, it kind of draws it in for you. It had a nice feel to it, and I know that a lot of the MIDI tools, it's on in Cubase, were kind of like amped up and ready for that sort of kind of work, if you like, using MIDI.
Yeah.
But I think my trial expired, and I just thought I'm just going to stick with Pro Tools. I've used Ableton a bit as well.
Superb. Yeah.
And what I like with Ableton is at the bottom of the screen, the way it kind of lays out your signal path in a very linear fashion, so you can physically see what's happening left to right. Most DAWs, it's kind of like you've got your mixer window and it's very much top down in terms of your signal path.
Yeah.
Well, this, you've kind of got it always open at the bottom, so you can actually see your EQ work, and you can see your compressor work, and you can see what your limiter's doing. And I quite like that workflow. But yeah, I just kind of have ended up sticking with Pro Tools. I did move to Logic for a time because Pro Tools 10.11 was a little unstable and it kept crashing. It was causing me grief, and that was awful working on my film Blanket, and it with a crashing DAW. It was a nightmare.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's not fun.
What was causing the crash, do you reckon?
So I think it was a multi-core. I think it was programming in 10 and 11 that didn't deal with the multi-core threading very well.
Yeah.
So this was on my old Mac, and I found that just one core would constantly be being thrashed to the point of distortion, and just like you've run out of IO buffer.
I remember that.
And I was thinking, like, is it my interface? Is it my sound card? Like I was going crazy, mate. It just kept going wrong, and I was closing everything on the Mac completely, like constantly going into the system usage window and just closing everything. And in the end, I went to Logic, and that still does it. It still does it. It seems a lot of these programs just do not use multi-threading very well. They like to load up one thread on the processor, and you're sitting there going, hang about, I've got 24 cores here or whatever, and you're using 2. What's going on? But I kind of understand it now a little bit, and you can get around that by sending different things to different buses. So you're kind of like I suppose you're routing your signal path for say you're getting a bit hot on one core. If you route it out to a different auxiliary track, and then you split up your processing, you can kind of mitigate that, because the way Logic especially assigns processes to different cores. I think you get to kind of like, once you've got 6 processes going on one audio track, you need to start splitting it out by boxing out. So it's all a bit complicated, and really it's if you don't mind me saying, it's piss poor programming that.
Yeah.
And that's what it is, man. It's like, come on, guys. Like, I get this is like Logic's an old thing, and it's all based on an environment window. And they can't break their code because it would break the premise of all the software. But it did drive me nuts. Now Pro Tools seems to be, it's very, very. To me it seems very stable. The current build, I'm very, very happy with it, and I haven't gone near Logic really for the last couple of years. To be honest, I've been in Pro Tools land.
Wow. Well, when I was at music school, and we had to score a this robot thing going around, this sort of robot animation thing, and we used Logic for that. I do remember the issue regarding the particular core peaking, and as a result, it would sort of throttle the rest of the cores, which weren't really doing any work. And I remember that, but I remember having to move certain plugins around to try and shift things. I thought I shouldn't have to be having to do this. Should be done automatically. Hopefully, I think they've rectified that. Yesterday, I was about to pull the trigger on the update to Nuendo 11. Now, what I found very interesting, more for you, not really for me, for people like you that actually work in the film world, was the Netflix loudness meter. And
Okay.
so I thought that's brilliant. You have an intelligent. I can't say it. It's a tongue twister. Intelligent, so intelligibility meter, right? Sorry
Okay.
about that. That was the real me just come out there. I saw. So that basically it shows how much of your vocal is intelligible to the end listener or in the mix, as opposed to the background score. So that's very, very interesting as well. Supervision plugin. But what made me think of Nuendo was the sound bits integration. So basically you can just tap into there and you'll jump into sound bits library and say, I want a gunshot, I want to have a machine gun, I want to have footsteps in water. You can type that in, get that straight over. No, I'm not trying to convert you over to Nuendo. But what I am trying to say is I thought about you yesterday when I was looking at this update, and regarding loudness metering for specific or mediums or outputs or clients. To me, this is all a bit gobbledygooky, but this -27.lufs, what the hell does that mean in your language?
I don't know where LUFS is. I mean, it's probably one of those things I would have known. I tend to sit on the peak metering or VU metering, or I will change it at times to RMS. So I get the RMS being, I suppose, the impedance, if that's the right word, on the current that's being pushed out, the force that's going out on that frequency. So if I'm doing something that's quite bass heavy, it tends to be your RMS that gets full. So Pro Tools has got kind of different metering in there. It's one of those things that I suppose the fact that they're now putting that into Nuendo is useful, because I suppose it's giving you like a benchmark of what they're going to be expecting if you send this to Netflix. And a similar thing existed with Apple, with the whole like mastered for iTunes kind of concept, which is more something they pushed out towards the mastering studios. And basically you had to go on a course like with Apple, and they teach you kind of what they're expecting from the final delivery. And then once the engineers had passed that course, they could then master the music to that specification, and therefore you were mastered for iTunes eligible. And I suppose it's the same sort of thing that they do for Netflix. Unfortunately, I haven't had the privilege of scoring like a Netflix like feature, if you like, or show, but I have pitched for Netflix trailers, and there was never anything in the brief that kind of, besides just, can you do it 24/48, standard for film. And even that information doesn't necessarily always come to you. I just deliver it in that, because that's just the standard that's going to be synced to DVD, say, or Blu-ray. But yeah, it's one of those strange things where I tend to wear different hats, but what the downside of doing that is you don't always retain all the information. So like for instance, today I've come back to the composer seat. I've got the composer hat on, and it's like you kind of, I've been so stuck in the mixing world, like where I've been mixing all the stuff for the guy for Skyquaker, or mixing bits and bobs. It's like you sort of, oh yeah, that's where it was. Oh yeah, that's where it was. And then if you do the composing thing for too long, like, and you're in a project for ages, and then you come into mastering, it's like, what was? Oh yeah, it's that. So when you're asking me about kind of like metering and things like that, I think it would be, I definitely switch when I'm mastering to look at RMS and peaks, I always set my kind of out to be sort of minus 0.1, if you like, 1 point down than 0, so we don't break through that clip. That kind of we don't clip, basically, because I don't trust the way that they model these software plugins isn't always precise, so I just put that on just to make sure that we're not actually going over it. And I'll even sometimes do like minus 0.2, if you like, or whatever, just so that I know I'm safe. but you can hear the clipping as well. But it's a habit. It's just a habit that I do. So yeah, it's one of those weird things because you keep. I think when I was at uni and I was getting way too like, oh, all this metering and all this VUs and all this stuff and kind of thing. And I remember the guy saying, look, they're just tools that are there for you, that are available to you. Yeah. And people will look at different. You go to one studio and they got it set to RMS because that engineer wants to see his RMS. Yeah. You go into another one, it's just set to peak. Whether you've got it kind of between 0 and like and 90 or 0 and 60 or 0 and 30, it all depends on the person. And I think for film world, I like to have, because they tend to be more dynamic in volume. Yes. Especially for trailer work, you want as much, while they're loud as hell, those quiet bits, especially if it's a horror or thriller, they're really important. So I like to have the 0-90 peak.
Wow.
For film work, if I'm doing like a podcast, like just vocal,
yes,
I'll set that much smaller because I don't need that resolution in the meter.
Wow, Mike. Wow, great answer there. Plus, you schooled me on the practical usage of metering as well. Respect to that one, my bro. Oi, I love that T-shirt, man. You ain't playing about, dude.
Sky Quaker.
Yeah. So I think that's brilliant. That's what I should do when my next money's coming. I'll order one if you can get one in my size, like triple or quadruple or 7, whatever it is, XL.
We could do it. I'll give you my APL family discount code, mate.
No. I don't even want the discount, because do you know what it is? I'm very much about supporting creatives. Yeah, I am like that as an individual. So I think people are being hammered by the current situation. Well, it's not even current anymore. It's becoming our new norm. So the trick is to not accept it as a new norm. So, yeah, I may as well ask it. Have you been more productive during lockdown?
Interesting. A good question and a highly relevant question. Yes and no. I think I would say whatever. Yeah, we locked down 3 or 4 or 5 or I just feel. I think it's 3. It just feels bombarded, because to me the tier system was still a lockdown. But yeah, I'd say that when we first sort of entered into this situation, I had a week's holiday. I went to see my old man in Yorkshire. And then the lockdown happened, and then I took another week's holiday, like in October, and then we locked down again in November. It's like I need to stop taking holiday, because every time I take holiday, the country gets locked down for several months. It's cursed, mate. I tell you. But I would say the first lockdown, because it's the kind of because the messaging was like, it's this period of time, we're going to be locked down, and I just focused, and I kind of used the time, I feel, very well. I scored Andrea Ratti's film Fragments, which has just won its 5th award. So I'm really, really pleased for the guys as well, not just me there. I mean, I was pleased to win Best Score. That meant a lot to me in 2020. That's probably one of my biggest accomplishments, I suppose, in that, whatever, it doesn't mean anything really, but you can now put award-winning composer, on your bio kind of thing. But I think for the guys as well, like, because that film went through Andrea had some grief getting that finished, and we just kind of sat there in that first lockdown, and I had him on live streams on YouTube privately, so he was almost like he was with me. And we go through different ideas for the film, and we completed it. I did so much during that first lockdown, man. I did the film. I pressed the vinyl of that score, which was my first physical vinyl pressing. Fragments. So I learned all the mastering for that, and which obviously I'd never had to consider before.
I'll be asking about that in a minute. Yeah.
How to kind of do the artwork, how to all that stuff, print safe areas. I launched the web store for Aurora Eclipse, so hence all these t-shirts and mugs and stickers and God knows what else for the company there, and that involves some web design as well. I started the podcast. I started AuroraCast, which we're now on. We've just done episode 18. So that's 18 episodes that are mixed and mastered, if you like. That wall behind me looked very different. I've got that backdrop up, so I put the couch up, and I can set up I learned, I suppose, about using Adobe's Premiere to edit videos.
Yeah.
And more OBS stuff in terms of the broadcasting. I kind of just threw myself in, and I read in tons as well, and a lot of growth in that first lockdown.
Yeah,
then, we opened up again, and I started taking a few shifts at the day job. I do still work a day job as well. Unfortunately, I'm not at the point. It was, do you know what? It was getting there. In terms of, I thought, you know what, if this continues like this, I'm going to be able to take way less shifts and focus way more on the music. Right now, I would say that it's a struggle. It's a struggle to kind of, there are pitches about, and I feel like there's kind of people are sitting in waiting to run.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like at such point when we finally get out of this nightmare that we've all been in, there's going to be a massive amount of push to get things done, films, TV shows, whatever else. I know that we spoke the other day. They've just expanded that film studio down near you in East London.
Dagenham, yeah.
In Dagenham, and Hollywood are putting a lot of money our way because I think the way our government have done the lockdown. I believe if you're in, at least it was the case. This is the thing, but the way the rules keep changing, it just bombards your brain box and you get confused. But I believe if you're working in film or TV or high-end advertisement or something like that in this country, you are exempt from lockdown rules. You can travel to work. So it really could be a positive thing for us in the film and the TV and the music world, and the creative world as a whole.
Yeah.
If we end up sort of almost these films start being produced here more. I know a lot of the film scores were done here. Obviously, they've got the Barbra Streisand stage at Sony and stuff in America, which I've actually been in. Wow. That was cool when I was in Los Angeles there. But a lot of the stuff's done at Abbey Road and there in terms of the music and things like that. So I think, did well the first lockdown, stayed focused. Crap in the second lockdown, just not, I was very down and very unsure, and that was affecting me creatively because you're just in limbo in a sense. You don't know what's going on, and you send a pitch to someone, you don't hear back for like 3 weeks because someone's furloughed or the equivalent of in the States. This time, January, I focused a bit more on myself, tried to get my health back in sort of order, tried to focus on sleep. I'm starting to come back to life, and things are sort of being initiated, and projects are kind of moving, and they're on their way. So it's been highly negative. I'm not gonna try and sit here and say, oh, it's a blessing. It's not a blessing even in the slightest, at all. And I'm very, very aware and very, very conscious of what other people are going through, and the amount of businesses that have been lost through this, and whatever else. So just from that sense, on a humanitarian level, there's no way I'm going to sit here and say it's positive. It's negative. But I think we are seeing some opportunities open up. Let's put it that way. And especially I think in the film and TV world, there's some opportunities, and I'm hoping that in terms of independent film as well, and independent artists, there might be some more stuff for us post lockdown.
Wow, bro! Wow, a question come over from Claire saying, where did you get the name Aurora Eclipse from?
Okay, that's another good question. So every film company, when you see their identity come up, Universal or whatever else, it's always like got a spade. Do you remember Orion? For those old boys it might be in the chat, Orion Films and whatever else,
yeah,
Touchstone or whatever. Like, excuse me, they all had space type themes, right? And one of my lifelong ambitions is to see the Northern Lights. Or the Aurora Borealis, I believe they call it, is the correct name. So I always liked that kind of idea of that. I found it very cinematic. That kind of, well, it is, isn't it? It's, if you think of the Northern Lights, that is the definition of natural cinematics, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, and when I got my first website made before Aurora, this is way back, in sort of 2011. Um, the web designer who was my I seen he's Rick, Mr. Talented. I kind of said, look, I want like a cinematic backdrop, basically. And he said, well, what colors do you like? And I'm like, well, greens, blues, like whatever. And he did this kind of like curtain effect with the Aurora Borealis in the background, with kind of greens and blues,
yeah,
mainly greens and
yeah.
blacks. And he put this curtain, like cinema curtains, like effect over it, and stars and whatever else. And that then, so I kind of had that as like my branding in my head.
Yeah, yeah,
So the Aurora was kind of like there, and then sort of merging those, because it's a right mouthful. Aurora Eclipse Productions. The amount of grief I get from people like, what's your email address? And I need to sort it out. I need like mike@aepl.com or something, because typing my email address is a thing, right?
yeah.
But the Eclipse, the Eclipse part of it is that almost like, in my brain box at the time, was that the Aurora is like eclipsing the sky. So all you can see is that those colors and that kind of cinematic world, And then of course, Hans Zimmer had Remote Control Productions, which is the three. So I'm like, well, I'm going to be Aurora Eclipse Productions,
Wow.
So I suppose that's kind of the story behind it. I mean, and it kind of stuck. And then I got Rick in again to do the actual logo, which I love. This, I don't know if you can see that on the shirt
it's
there.
on the screen right now. But
So that's the AE, and then you've got Productions as well with the green colours. And it just kind of stuck, But sometimes I do sit there going, you'd like to complicate things, don't you, Mike? Mike@AuroraEclipseProductions.com. You try to say that to like someone on the phone. How do you spell that, sir? I'm like, oh Christ, here we go. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna register like AE-prod or something just to try and shorten it. But yeah, that's how that kind of came about, I suppose. It's I hope it comes across still well and it's not too kind of crazy, but that's kind of how that name came about. And then I incorporated that company in 2013.
Wow, wow, wow. Which was the film company that had the gong? Was it Golden Harvest? Or what was it? They had the man hitting the gong.
Yeah, I remember it, but I can't remember the name now.
They have it at the start of many. Is it kung fu films as well? I think.
Yeah. What was it?
I'm sure it's Golden Harvest.
That sounds about right. There's so many, man. If you think about the how many film companies were out there compared to now, it's quite incredible.
Yeah.
It's big. The industry's becomes big but small.
Yeah, true.
So I like this. The working title still about. I like working title, and I do like my Lionsgate films and the more sort of, yeah. Well, Disney just owns everything now, don't they?
Well, let's just take this a little bit more. Let's look at it from a DAV angle, right? That's an opportunity to, if you look at, like, if you want to go towards MK Ultra and mind control, that would be the perfect opportunity if you synchronize it with the right sound to actually get people into the right sort of mood. So that's why I spoke about the gong or the roar of the lion.
The lion.
Yeah.
The gem.
Yeah, and some people will associate it. It could put them in a certain. If you're in a cinema and you got this, what is it? What is it nowadays? Is it like 20.1 they can have, like up and down there?
Well, they're Dolby Atmos. Yeah, it's 46 odd speakers and like 3 subs. So I suppose you could say it's almost 46.4. I suppose might be. Well, it depends on the auditorium, but yeah, the ones I've worked on were 46.4. I suppose you could say, or 46.5 because there's 5 subs and 46 speakers.
Wow. So maybe have you synchronized, like, because yours is an animation, the actual thing, like like Aurora Eclipse Productions. Have you done the animation part to it?
Oh, what the yeah. So what? Yeah. So there's a funny story behind that. So my mate was doing some work for a company, designing, because he does motion graphics and stuff like that, and he'd spent ages doing this sort of spinning. Now this is what I completely don't understand this world. I don't know whether it's in like, I believe it's in like After Effects they use to do it, but basically you could, what he'd done is he'd made his own template that he can put other people's logos in, and just it applies the same effects to that animation.
Yes.
I probably explained that really badly. So he was working on the sound design, like of the for this company kind of logo.
Yes.
And I kept hearing him like all day, like doing this sort of sound design. I thought that sounds quite cool. And I'm like, add a boom. He's like, I'm gonna add a boom, mate. So I started trying to get involved. And he's like, let me do it. I'm like, all right. And basically, once he completed that day's work, I was like, look, throw the Aurora logo in there, man. Like this, what does it look like? And we just changed the colors a little bit, and then I've got like a swooshy kind of ident that I put on all the, any video that goes on the Aurora Eclipse Productions YouTube. Basically, it's got that swooshy thing on it.
Swooshy. I love it.
Yeah, swooshy thing on it, you know. So yeah, I've got my own ident. Yeah, I suppose that's me. You know, it's yeah. Whether it's ever going to end up on a film, I don't know. But yeah, I've got it. It will do for YouTube.
Wow, I got a message come from Claire saying that gong was Rank Productions, and she's put an emphasis on Rank Productions. Like, damn, you're an idiot. You know what I mean? So yeah, I've got that. I got messages come through from Harvey. She's basically saying, we've already covered the one regarding how you've been keeping during lockdown. Right. What's your most favourite project you've worked on?
You know, it's projects are weird, aren't they? Because I think anyone who works on, you know, I know from yourself as well, it's probably true for you as well. You get into that kind of, it's almost like you're in short-term relationships with your projects.
Yeah.
So you sort of you know, you really get involved in it, and you quite intensely focus, and then it becomes like obsessive, and you're sort of they always say that, don't they? The premiere is almost like a wake. Like I believe Hans Zimmer, the German film composer, has said that is the, you know, the premiere is like the wake for everybody, because it's like the project's finished and everyone's got this kind of hollow sort of you know, is the project's gone. It's like, what do we do now, kind of thing. You know, I would say that I think just because of the working, I suppose the energy that and the relationship that we established while doing Fragments, you know, in the way that was kind of, obviously we were in lockdown, we innovated to do the kind of the live streams, you know, and the team that Andrea put together for Fragments, and then I got the, I suppose the, yeah, I don't know where, because I almost wanted to say that I didn't care about the validation that I got that award, because it kind of, I think you can start. I don't think I have an ego in that capacity. I don't want a wall of trophies, but it was nice that project we did got recognised. I suppose, like, it, you know, it's won 5 awards. It's I got best score kind of thing. I suppose it's like it's nice to know that perhaps people could feel that energy that we all had creatively during that project. You know, we were all at home just doing what we could. It was all completely remote, you know, and whatever else. So I suppose for that standpoint, I would have to say that the Fragments is probably one of my favorite projects. Outside of that would be a project I did a very long time ago with a friend I used to collaborate with, who unfortunately we've sort of broken contact with now. Oh. And it was a documentary that he was doing, an animation based on the Krays, and he did like an oil painting of Ronnie and Reggie Kray. You know, and he just sent me basically these sort of photos and these sketches that he was going to merge together. I had no visuals, and I had to put together like a 13-minute like score basically with no context, and that was, I suppose, that worked really well for me, actually, just seeing images of what, and I tried to do this real sort of, I mean, not that you could really call the Krays underdogs, you know, but I tried to kind of, I was playing this video game at the time called The Wolf Among Us.
Oh yeah, Yeah,
I don't know. You play that one, and it's got this kind of underdog, sort of like the guy's evil, or the guy's bad, but he's not. You know, like it's got that kind of like lurking in the shadows, sort of edgy atmosphere to that game, and I do think that's spilled into that score. And that's on my first kind of weird compilation album. It's called Legend. The something, it's called The Craze or something, like the Legends of the Craze or something like that. Yeah, I'd say that from a personal standpoint would probably be up there, but definitely it's all about the team for me, and I think it's got to be Fragments. Fragments has got to take first place there.
Wow. Yeah, because I noticed that, is it the CFIFF Changing Face monthly awards? I thought flipping brilliant. You know what I mean? To actually be award winning. I know it's you're part of that team that won the award. You know, and you're to actually be an award winning film score dude or dudette. That's a really, really.
It's the worst. So it was Out of the Can that gave me the best score. But yeah, Changing Face. There's so many kind of best, best drama or best sci-fi, best fantasy. You know, and but yeah, I feel like when I got the film, the audio wasn't edited. It was still, cut, clapperboards and whatever else all over it, and dynamically incorrect. And then we did all the sound design and the music and the final sort of dub.
Yeah.
And that was cool as well, because I was kind of going to do the dub. It's either dub or re-recording. I believe in America they call it re-recording and we call it the dub, which is essentially the final guy who mixes all these different elements together. Because that's one thing you find is that if you're the music guy, your faders tend to be loud. If you're the sound effects guy, your faders tend to be loud. So someone's got to come in and sort of, I always call it balancing the ego faders. Someone's got to come in and be like, well, that's far too loud, that's far whatever. And there was a conversation around me doing the dub for Fragments, but I refused. It would have been paid, but I refused to do it because I don't think it should be. I think the person doing that final mix should be a completely new person.
Yeah, it's
a fresh set of ears. It's a completely different take on the film. So, and Andrea, he listened and he said, "Yeah, okay, I'll hire someone," and I felt very appreciative of that he'd listened to. He'd listened to that advice basically, and just that small step there. Like that could be why we're winning these awards. Perhaps if I had done the dub, it wouldn't have been. Do you know what I mean? It's amazing how just those one decisions like that can make so much of an impact, because you cannot get away with crap sound on a film. You just can't get away with it.
Bro, you can't get away with crap. Well, we can with film, definitely not. But like, I know the feeling in terms of the point regarding a fresh set of ears. Meaning, like, I was so stuck in production for months on end, and Claire knows this. Like, literally, get up in the morning, producing a track, and it's gone 2 months now. By the time I come to the mix, you get into the point where, like, I want to get it all sort of over and done with, but I also want it to be really, really good. Then I was worried about the whole NDA sort of thing, like with a record label, so that sort of limits you. But then I think you should have the ability, from a music point of view, I'm not sure how it works in the film world, but you should have the ability to nominate a person that you trust, and put that on any sort of contracts you sign, to send over the mix to, even if it's just a mate who's got a good set of ears, good set of monitors. It's a fresh set of ears, because that can basically save your bacon. So basically, I ballsed up a mix, right? And then I remember apologising to the record label, and they're giving the opportunities to rectify it, which is good. So I know the thing about having tired ears, and you literally have to go away, not even for a few hours. It could even be for a few days, a whole week.
Without question.
You listen to all the mistakes, and it's just shocking.
Without question, and that's another thing that took me a long time to learn is like, if you're burnt out and you're feeling tired, get the hell away from the mixer.
Yeah.
Don't touch it. Go to bed. Go out. Whatever. Have some food. Don't do it, because you're wasting your time, and then most of the time you're going to be making more problems than it's worth. Just go to bed. And I think, I mean, that's one thing that's good about, I suppose, having a company
Yeah.
is that, you know, like if you, when you're signing an NDA, you can kind of, the NDA tends to be with the company. So I could then have the, I mean, it means you take the responsibility if one of your guys stitches you up or whatever else, but it kind of gives you the option to then, I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, some of these NDAs can be quite harsh where it's like on you, like with, even though you're within a company, it's like, you know, if this gets out, we're suing you personally kind of thing.
Wow. Yeah.
But like generally speaking, the NDAs kind of will say like this, you know, this company and its contractors and then you in turn would get that mate you're talking about.
Yeah.
If you're doing your paperwork properly, you'd get them to sign an NDA from your company for this specific project. So there's a paper trail of that kind of, and really it's all about respect. Like, and this has come up twice. This has come up in Aurora Cast with Al Eels and Paul Young, who's a producer and a film director, where they spoke about how you'd pick a team and the dynamics between producer and director and composer. This all comes into it because it's like this. It's, you know, they're all kind of on the same level, but the producer's up here really, and but that's, you know, and it's come up with Michael Lee Taylor, who's a boom, you know, he worked on the Star Wars recording sound and stuff like that, and how the script was kind of protected, you know, so certain people had different access to different parts of the script for, say, Solo or something like that, but nobody was betraying it. There seems to be a like respect for the art there. Tends to be a thing, which is nice. It's nice that people actually respect the project that they're working on and they understand the bigger picture.
Yeah. That's the main thing, is the trust. Do you know, regarding Harvey asked another question. She's basically said, I've had a sneak peek at your Instagram. Right, okay. Nice to see you like to cook. What's your showstopper dish?
Oh man, you know, food. You know, this is the thing, right? I probably should have been a chef.
Yeah.
Because I think we've spoken about this before, but you know, but really being a composer or being a sound engineer is very similar to cooking, because it's you've got you kind of got all your different ingredients that add different, like add different flavors to the palate, if you like. You know, I kind of I would say it depends on how flush I am. Depending on what I'm going to eat or what I'm going to not eat. I go through. I'm quite sensitive to kind of carbohydrates and sugars and breads and stuff. So if I eat too much of that stuff, like I love Italian food, but I just bloat if I eat too much of that stuff. So I was following like what they might call like the ketogenic or a paleo type diet. So quite high fat, to be honest. So
I've got to get this in there, bro.
It's just what's this, man? What you got?
Only for a chocolate biscuit. You remember that joke?
Yeah, I remember it. You go for it, mate. You go for it. I kept wondering. It's like, what has he got in front of him? He's got like, I feel like you've got a whole sort of, you got a kettle and then you got your chocolate, you got like your coffee, and you can make your cup of stuff. Like, you know, it's like your little hangout in that room, man. I feel like the camera's sort of a bit more zoomed in than normal when you stay, dude. You've got like you got your whole kitchen in front of you, bro, haven't you, sort of thing?
Onions, garlic, everything.
Oh, mate, I love it, mate. I love it. But okay, to come back to the question, I think my father was very instrumental in this, because he was a salesman and he traveled around a lot. Like he was on the road all around the world. He was traveling.
Yeah.
And you know, he got a taste for kind of lots of different foods, which then he passed to me. So when I go down, my parents unfortunately split up when I was young. But when I go down to see him, you know, I feel like it was him really who kind of, you know, let's go for a Thai or let's go for an Indian. And this is Southern Indian food, you know, so we're not going to be having any meat with this one, Mike, you know, or we're going to a more Pakistani restaurant, they're giving more meat. And I started understanding a little bit more about how that works, and you know, and then we go for Greek food, and so I would say that when that started happening was when I started putting on some weight because I became like quite into my food, you know. And I like I like meze food, you know, because it's very social. You know, and I think Indian food is like that as well. You know, I always loved the concept of like poppadoms because it's literally, to me, it's you're in the restaurant, you know, like, and you're, to me, it's a very easy um conversation starter, you know, before it gets too heavy. People have had their I always have too much, man, like, you know, but I just feel like I like that social element of that.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, you
yeah,
get in a restaurant, you're hungry, straight away you can have you can get going pretty quick, right? And you can take the edge off and you start talking and you relax into the conversation better.
yeah.
So in terms of my own cooking, is, I would say that, I mean, at the moment this morning I had like literally some mixed beans with like a spicy sauce that I made just out of like, I put like bit of butter, bit of olive oil, garlic, ginger, you know, then just like garam masala,
Go on.
turmeric and chili powder,
Yeah.
two eggs, like, kind of thing. And I threw in, you know what I do as well, because I'm cheap. I'll buy those jalapenos in like the
Jars.
vinegar,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. They're
I
nice.
keep the vinegar because a bit of acid. I'll tip that in to stuff like that just to give it a
Smart,
bit more
smart.
base.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ground pepper has to be fresh ground pepper. You know, and bit of balsamic vinegar. That's what I had today, you know, before I came onto the chat.
Wow.
But yeah, I'll do kind of, you know, like I say, if I'm doing that diet that's particularly like high fat, I will cook like butter chicken
Nice.
because
Yeah.
it's heavy and just lots of ghee. You know, it's heavy and fat, and I'll put loads of ghee in. You know, so
Whoa,
like,
whoa, you said the word ghee, so you're using proper ghee in the tin. You ain't messing
yeah.
about, man.
Yeah, you can't have some rubbish. No, no, because you can take like you know, when people, like, you can take, to me, there's a specific. Now, I don't necessarily understand like the process behind ghee, but it's got that. I think it, to me, when you use ghee, you can get your pan a hell of a lot hotter
Yeah,
without
yeah, yeah.
like, it's got a high smoke point,
Yeah, yeah.
so you don't mess up your spices when you're cooking them.
True.
You know, if you try doing this with olive oil, forget it. It's going to taste wrong and it's just going to burn, right? And I tend to find that when you're talking about people always say to me like, oh, you know, whenever I try cooking curries, it's like I can never get the texture right. It's like, well, yeah, because you're not cooking it properly, even in the slightest, basically, you know. So, do you know what I mean? It's, to me, a lot of that texture comes from ghee. You know,
Yeah.
I could be talking, but that's my take on it anyway. So yeah, I do like cooking, you know, but it will change. Sometimes I do a roast dinner, you know. Sometimes if I'm flush, I might get some like lamb cutlets and start doing some sort of like lamb based dish, or you know, or I'll do a curry, or I'm having, you know, beans and eggs, like, because I'm skinned like I am right now, you know, or like I'll buy a 70p samosa, you know, or whatever, man. Like, you know, so I'm trying to survive right now, you know.
Oh my! You know, you're so lucky the fact that you can go over the road and get samosas like that, because, you know, I'll be honest, they're difficult to make well. They're very, very hard to make well. You know, regarding the ghee, yeah, it's clarified butter, isn't it? And basically, if you look at the health benefits of that, it's shocking. It's mad, and you know, the Western world is trying to market it as a health product now, and all the rest of this, which is hilarious. Which is well, like, you know, it's been going on for centuries. But you know, but what I'm trying to get at is okay. So the cooking points, the heat, and also the cancer fighter. That's what I'm trying to get at, man. There's a correlation between fighting cancer and the ghee itself. So it's interesting. Now, I just got to get it out of my system. Look into the camera and say the word curry.
Curry.
He said it to an Indian man. Right, perfect. Brilliant. Do not worry, it's only curry, my friend. So, the thing is, I cook a lot. You know, during the whole lockdown, I thought I miss my mum's food, and I think it's because we're both producers in our own right, and so you're also producing in the kitchen, whereas our ingredients are, you know, normally there'd be our sonic palette. Instead, we're actually using ingredients. I'm glad that you're into that to make a great dish. That's
The,
important.
the connection is there without it is there, and I find it incredibly relaxing, and it's interesting what you can create with your it's the same, you come to a track, you've got your drums, your bass guitar, backing vocals and lead vocals, okay, you know to me, you can change the analogies into food very easily. I think it's something very, very creative, and I find it very relaxing cooking food. I like it.
Trust me, I was telling Claire the same thing the other day. It's therapeutic, man.
Yeah, without question.
Trust me, trust me. Next question come through from Harvey again. What's the most interesting book on your bookshelf behind you?
Wow. Wow. So, books are a weird thing for me because up until I would say I went to university, I didn't really read much at all. Like I wouldn't say I was the most like read person at all. And then university gave me the tools. If there's one thing university did give me, if you take all the music out of it and everything I learned with the desks and whatever else, it was the ability to kind of critically think and the ability to read and to analyze and to kind of take different viewpoints from different people and then kind of form your own idea, because that's what studying's about. It's not about reading a book and saying, well, this guy said this, and that we're done. It's not, you got to make your own mind up from what's kind of said. Yes. Nowadays I'm a big fan of the audiobook. I read a hell of a lot of audiobooks because it's found time, I suppose, and if it's something like I just finished Matthew McConaughey's book, which is read by him. Yes. So if it's someone's biography, then I like the fact that it can be kind of read by the person who's actually speaking or actually written it. In terms of the bookshelf behind me,
yes,
there's one book that's a mammoth. Let me get it. Let me grab it.
Okay, bro. Cool. What is this? What could it be?
Right.
Bloody hell. Mike, wait, what is this?
Mate, this cost me a fortune at uni, right?
Yeah. Oh so my God.
Music and emotion, yeah?
The Handbook of Music and Emotion. How amazing.
So there's a lot of pages in this book.
Wow.
But it really breaks down everything to do with it, with the effect the music and sound has on your body, the effect it has on other people, the effect it has in politically, culturally, socially, historically, how it's edged its way into us. Some of it is very kind of high level, and it's not an easy read. That's for sure. It's definitely a book I would say you jump in and you will take a section and interpret. It's a bit like the Bible. It's a bit like the Bible for emotion and music. Yeah, I don't know many people who just grab the Bible and read the Bible, as one whole. It's not like that. I think you'll go to specific sections, won't you? And then you'll interpret that section and you'll take that section in and you'll move on and you'll come back and you'll jump in and out at different times. So I'd say that book definitely is probably the most fascinating book I've perhaps picked up in terms of I just wasn't expecting the depth that's in that book. And it was about £80 when I bought it. But I'll keep it forever because I can just keep going back to it and look at it. Other notable one, How to Read a Film. That was great when I was at uni. How to kind of look at a film and break it down into different sections, and you like internalize a film. But there's so much stuff on there, man. From just kind of, the whole bottom shelf's like heavy metal books that I got when I was writing my sort of in my first year. Even I had to write about kind of culture and music. There's loads of heavy metal books down there that to be honest, I don't really want anymore. But I just bought them at a time. Yeah. Then we got kind of like how to play guitar, how to play piano. Then the top left section, half that shelf is all production stuff.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of like, there's some Bobcats books there.
Bob
did the
Katz.
orchestration. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's all kind of like textual books,
Yeah.
and then we've got some like more philosophical, religious books. You know, Nietzsche, Carl Jung, all the kind of philosophical Plato. You know, all the kind of guys down there. Western history of Western philosophy, and I need to get more into Eastern philosophy because it's kind of. I'm just sick of reading about existentialism. It's kind of depressing me now. I feel I need some more balance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I like the whole breakdown of the book, and I think that that great big mammoth of a book would you have there. I think that's a great investment in itself, basically, because you know I have a couple of books behind me, and I remember paying for 50 quid back in the day for Kennedy and Grubb on medical law. So I know and the pages were like tracing paper, and the font's
Right.
really small, but all the cases regarding clinical negligence and all the rest of that, they were all there, and I thought to myself, so you have the ability to argue and debate with people, so therefore you became the doctor's worst nightmare, sort of thing. If you tried anything dodgy, I actually took the book to the doctor.
But a book like that as well is because it's full of case study stuff like that. Again, it's different to this because the application is different. But
Yeah,
I feel like you'd go to that book for specific examples of wrongdoing in the past or
yeah.
negligence in the past, and you could say, well, these people are doing the same. That it's history repeating itself, man. This is why books are so important in history. You know, people ledgering down things that have happened before. You know, and as a way of teaching us, like this is. You know, this book really it covers so much different stuff, you know, and it's like I suppose I still don't look the fact that music would affect you like that. Yes, of course, there's going to be the frequencies and the kind of like the shared experience, I suppose, of those sounds. But that's something that's kind of been like bred in us through our ancestry, and you know, Carl Jung talks a lot about this kind of. I feel like every time we talk, this comes up. But he talks a lot about this. Talks a lot about this kind of collective consciousness that we all share.
Yes.
And while it will change, while it will kind of change, like across cultures, you know, people have reported sort of seeing similar creatures in their dreams from from even back in like before we could even fly to other continents, you know.
Yeah.
So I think there's this. It's very important to understand our lineage and where we've all come from, and what human beings have gone through to get us here today. And I think this book was what drew me to this book was just that. What has been the effect of sound and music on the human being?
Wow. You know, I'm pretty big into the sonics on the human body and emotions of fear and DARPA and using it as weapons tech, and I find it fascinating, actually. And I also find a lot of knowledge suppressed on that, and you'll find yourself in hot water should you start delving in very low frequencies. You know what I mean? Especially that's when the government start getting involved. Why is he experimenting with this? Why is it that your speakers can only put out these certain they only go down to a certain frequency? I remember watching a video of a horn. They made this huge horn, and whether they used a sine wave thing to trigger it or what have you. I don't know how it worked, but I remember it shattered the glass.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was very, very, very interesting, man. Another question, Claire. Is that a Himalayan salt lamp you have there?
Yes, I have three of them. So this started back when I was living with my mum's after university, and I think again, what is it with us guys? I mean, you know, you look like you've got some natural sunlight on you today, Dav, which is nice to see, mate. You know, if I look bright, it's because I got artificial lights all around me because I'm sitting in a dark room. But the room I was in was basically a converted garage.
Wow.
And just one window kind of thing, and I can remember I saw the salt lamp. Do you know, I can't remember where I first saw it. It was in someone's YouTube video. I think I was looking at all us composers have got some sort of lamp, or it's just part and parcel of the job. I think you've got to have like your LED lights behind your screens and all that, and whatever else. I think it's all about atmosphere and relaxing into those late night sessions or early morning sessions, which have been for me lately with my new regime. So, but I also read about the Himalayan salt lamps and this is true, because this room in the winter, I wouldn't say it gets damp, but when the air's got that kind of dampness in it, they kind of act like dehumidifiers because they absorb the moisture. And then when you turn the light on, like if I turn that off and go away for a week,
yes,
when I come back, the lamp itself will actually be wet. Then you turn the bulb on and it burns it gets hot and it burns the moisture away. And there is some study around, you're going to have to correct me on this because I might get this wrong, but with the electricity in the room to do with the ions, I believe they put out negative ions.
Yeah.
And I believe negative ions is the good thing and positive ions is the bad thing when it comes to like your health.
Yeah.
So they do apparently they do that, and whether it's psychosomatic, but I found that when I bought the biggest one, which is that one. I don't know if you can actually see it. Yeah, I think you can see it on my side there.
I thought it was a prop originally from the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. That's what I thought it was.
That's what you thought it was. No, I've actually got there's one over in the very corner of the room behind me. I believe I'm pointing to the right side over there.
Yeah.
Then I got one next to me there, and there's one in the corner there. So I got three that are on pretty much all the time I'm in this room. And I think they've got a relaxing quality to them. If they don't do anything, then they don't. But it makes me feel better.
Exactly, because I think running studios from like back in the day, for my little limited knowledge on this, it was actually a feature where studios would advertise natural light. You know what I mean? Like, you've got natural light to use in the studio but I understand it from their point of view. From a security perspective, you wouldn't want to have windows. You know what I mean? So
I have got windows, but yeah, that is precisely why.
Yeah.
They're closed.
Yeah. Regarding we've got a lovely southward facing studio environment over here in Dagenham. So we've got the sun, even though it's a cloudy day today. But I realised just to rely on the natural light, it is lovely to have that. Plus you get to see all, witness 7 or 8 lovely trees here, and
it's good.
It's beautiful because I think
it's important, man.
Trust me, and it's that important that the guy in the room downstairs, man, he goes, Dav, I go, what's up, bro? He goes, come here. I go, what's up? He goes, I did what he said. Walked in the room, right? What he's done is painted the walls, right, with this carbon paint.
Okay.
Right? And I told him, go check this out. So he's measuring the ambient levels of radiation. Now I know I'm taking this a bit nutty, right? But I stood there, and the last time I felt that good, right, I'll be honest with you, was when me and Claire went to the forest, to Epping Forest. So that's the first thing they did during the first lockdown. They stopped you going to the forest. They put red lines.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they'll stop you going there.
Yeah, it's wrong, mate.
It is. So what I did yesterday, as opposed to ordering some slutty bit of audio gear, I paid like 190 quid for this mad tub of paint. So I thought,
okay.
Yeah, so I thought that way, the guy in the next room doing his stuff, his Wi-Fi won't penetrate through my wall.
I tell you something as well, though, because I know you're talking about this from obviously like the radiation side of it and the RF frequencies and those sorts of things. But if there's one thing as well, I don't know whether this is fed into like my music work or my kind of like my discipline, I suppose, as a film composer. But I've always been kind of let's say I live in a house share, and like one of my flatmates and his girlfriend would have had a big row, like in the front room.
Yeah.
And I come home, and they've gone out, say. So I didn't even know that they've been. Well, I haven't been here, you know what I mean? I'd walk in that room and I'd be like, hang about, what's going on in here? Like there'd be a horrible, grim sort of atmosphere, energy in that room, and I'm quite sensitive to that stuff. And I've found recently as well, I think, because I've been trying to do this mad. Coming back to what we talked about in the beginning of this interview with the coffee and stuff, trying to kind of relax as the day goes on and get to bed early.
Yeah.
Now, I like my heavy metal, but it's the devil's music, man. And I think the reason I'd say with that as well is if I'm thrashing out in here some thrash metal or some speed metal and I'm all whatever, you're not sleeping, and the energy in the room is of that amped kind of energy.
Yes.
Whereas if you like, I tried to put on some recordings of like like Gregorian monks or something along those lines, and again, maybe it's just literally down to like the BPM of the music and the energy of the music and whatever else, because they're still going to be singing in sort of church modes.
Yes.
They're still going to be in the sort of 440 frequencies, if you like, unless I guess they're proper. If it's proper Gregorian, it probably wouldn't be.
That's right. Yeah.
But this is modern music. I'm listening to modern Gregorian recorded music. I'd need to analyze it to see what they are, what the tonality is. But I find basically the general mood in the room, even in terms of like the ambience of the room, like if you think of a camera, if you take a photograph, and you've got the ISO points where you can have where you get the grain in the photograph.
Yes.
If you know what I'm talking about, kind of thing.
Yes.
Again, I don't know too much about photography, but I try. I find that graininess in the room disappears depending on your mood. Personally, maybe I'm completely nuts, but there's just been an observation that if I go somewhere quite peaceful, where there's sort of I don't know, some feng shui or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Well, every culture has a way of dealing with this, I believe. Every culture seems to have a system in place to sort of moderate a person's environment, and I just found that if I'm chilled out and I put on some music that's kind of, perhaps and again, this could be coming down to what I was talking about, these books and stuff like that. Perhaps it's literally just when we hear religious music, we feel naturally relaxed, and obviously when we hear heavy metal music, I'm about to jump into one of these mosh pits or whatever. I don't know. Maybe it is purely conditioning, social conditioning, but I do feel like there's something deeper than that.
Oh, definitely. I like the point you made about people leaving an energy behind. That's very, very, very interesting, because I researched into this a little bit, and with experimentation and some weird nutty stuff that I do in my downtime if I ever get it. There's a theory that a person who's got a bad energy, right? That energy, they leave like it moves in a vortex. Whether it's counterclockwise, what have you, but they can replicate the energy. So let's say they've gone into the kitchen, they've dumped the energy there, but it doesn't necessarily follow them. They can replicate it elsewhere around the house. I know we're getting into the metaphysical over here, but at the same time, you'd imagine you could do that with the positive energy. So if you want to go look at the examples of how Native American Indians, which were in teepees, the invaders then came and put them into these reservations and stuff where the buildings were square. The actual vortex of the energy wouldn't flow correctly in a square, or to delve more. But it had detrimental effects on energy. So I think to go more into that, I think it would have been Jill Matson's books, The Lost Waves of Time. I think I remember reading that, and I think she mentioned it there. I think, but regarding the couple having an argument in a room and that energy pattern still being there, I believe that's why it's so important to have positivity around you. And if you can cleanse an environment in whatever method you want to, I mean, some top level magician would phone me the other day, and what he said to me, this is like some scary dude. Yeah, and he's probably listening or watching this interview right now. He goes, if you think that some woman walking around with a bit of sage is going to get rid of me, Dav, burning some sage, he goes, you got another thing coming. He goes, I was like laughing. I thought, oh my god. He goes, brilliant. That's some amateur stuff.
Some sage. I like that. I love that, man. I do, but that sort of stuff, I love that, man. Walking around with some sage, that's going to sort out the world. It's that superstitious.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, the intentions
but,
there. Yeah.
Exactly that. But I tell you, there's another thing. Bringing it back around to film, like to me. So I just read Matthew McConaughey's book.
Yes.
And he was describing how he would get into these characters and the actions he'd go through to get into that character. And it's like he had to believe that character. He had to kind of become that character. And I think this is the powerful thing about actors, you know, and I suppose the art of acting, and then the subsequential my job to kind of fill the gaps, perhaps where the actor hasn't performed as well, or to work alongside the actor or the actress. Talking about the energies and things like that, it's like I feel like these people really they really manifest what their character is, and it's interesting. You hear of so much tragedies as well, like the Heath Ledger, you know, like when he was playing the Joker, he ended up unfortunately losing his life, you know, because it's like he's literally becoming this character. And it's interesting what you say about being able to protect yourself against that environment or against those negative energies, because there's another thing that Matthew McConaughey, I don't know if you saw the Sky Atlantic show, True Detective. Bless you. Bless you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
The True Detective, Matthew McConaughey played this real sort of nihilistic, dark soul, you know, character, and his performance of it was excellent. But he said that I think he was talking to Jordan Peterson on a podcast, and he said that, you know, around that time his faith was particularly strong, because Matthew McConaughey is a Christian.
Yes.
And he said that he kind of used his faith to balance him against that character.
Yeah.
You know, and this is the thing. I think we think of like show business and entertainment, and I suppose this is why the Marvel stuff just doesn't particularly do it for me, because it's lacking depth for me. It's that Matthew McConaughey's character Russ Cole, I would seriously recommend. You'd love it. True Detective season 1, it'll be straight up your street. I know it would, because of the symbology and the subjects it's dealing with. It's absolutely brilliant. It's Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. But if you watch that True Detective season 1 and you think back to this conversation we're talking about a person protecting themselves against like this darkness.
Yes.
It's very true, and film composers as well. Like there's a famous story with Hans Zimmer where he just scored Gladiator, you know, in 2000, and his wife was with him like in the premiere, and she hadn't heard any of the music or anything, you know. And apparently during some of the real sort of like raw, energetic, like emotional scenes, she just punched him on the arm, you know, and said, "Now I understand why you've been such an like insufferable nightmare for the past like 6 months, because you." Is a composer as well. Like I some of the films, some of the content I've scored has dealt with some quite heavy subject matters. Yes. It does rub off on you.
Wow. So what would you have your own method of cleansing yourself besides the sage? I think there was someone high in the occult circles, which I heard talking, and he basically said a story where he met someone who was higher than him in the occult circles, where he said they would wet a towel, right? Because I think he was dealing with a woman, and this woman, she earned her money by working in strip clubs where she didn't want to. So when he went to see her, she would dump loads of bad energy onto him, so all the energy of the clients and all the rest of that. And so he told her one day, he goes, wet a towel, wring it a bit, and then he goes, spin the towel above your head. Right, and I thought, this sounds mad. I thought, what would I actually stop my walk out over here to listen to what he had to say. And he goes, because he then spoke about the vortex, the energy vortex, and what that'll do, that'll cleanse it. He goes, but then you have to wash that towel afterwards, or discard of it. So there's dumping and the transference of energy into water. Because notice how the towel had to be wet.
Okay.
Yeah, sort of flannel or something, and so forth. That's very interesting. So if you've been working in a film now and you're dealing with, let's say, a negative scene, what is your discharge method, or cleansing method? What would you do, Mike?
I think to be honest, it's something that's only really come onto my radar recently. Yeah. That you have to be aware. If I'm answering honestly, and not just, it's something that I wasn't aware of up until relatively recently, because I think I have been reading a hell of a lot the past sort of 2-3 years about the world and the unfortunate situations which many people on this planet have found themselves in. through various regimes and whatever else. And I think I haven't. I think if I was to deal with it now, it would be a case of that you would become, if you're scoring a character, you know, and you're coming up with themes and kind of trying to get into their psychology, it is going to brush off on you. But I think if you, like I say, reading stuff like Carl Jung and understanding like that every single person's got the capability to be dark or to be evil or to you know, you can't, the idea that someone's 100% good or 100% evil isn't true. Everybody's got a specific side to them. And I suppose it's a case of, if you understand that about yourself, you're kind of equipped to go into these, to put yourself in other people's shoes. And I think I'm more conscious now if I'm like sort of projecting, like if I'm having a go at someone and about something, or I'm feeling angry or about a person, it's kind of, I'm a little bit more aware of why I'm angry with that person. And a lot of the time it can be something that's actually not quite right with you, that you're trying to project onto that other person. So I think this knowledge is what's missing from society. I think a lot of people now are so emotional and sort of just not balanced, don't have a spiritual grounding basically with themselves or the world. So I think if I was approaching a scene now that was heavy like that and it was upsetting me, if it's upsetting me, then that's good, because it means that the film is working. The filmmaker's vision is working. And I channel that in myself, but I also would understand what I think I'd like to think anyway, I would have the understanding of the human condition now to deal with it and not let it kind of spill into my personal life, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and realize that you're conjuring bad energy.
Yes, of course, conjuring
so,
as well.
You know, perhaps you might need to step up your gym activity or something while you're doing that particular scene, or you'd need to make sure you're getting the correct amount of sleep before you deal with such a deeply emotional scene, or you know, like yeah, you know, because we see this time. Heath Ledger's a classic case of this.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, recently as well. I mean, you know, I think as well is creative people can have problems, and a lot of the time it's their problems that makes them so creative. I mean, we saw, was it Phil Spector just passed away?
Yeah, I put that on my thingy.
You know, but man, because he was also a murderer.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the news media, the way they're reporting on it is, it's like, yeah, of course, it's the worst sin you could commit is to take somebody's life.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But I think it's having the capability to in a way separate those things, as horrible as that sounds. It's like I mean, maybe Phil Spector's a bad example. I mean, I'll tell you a person who speaks a lot of interesting viewpoints about psychology and warnings to people about violence is Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm going to sound crazy saying this sort of stuff, but it's understanding. I think we tend to just push away things that hurt us in this world now. We push them away, and we turn our heating up, and we get a Just Eat, and we have a beer, and everything's great. And what Netflix show are we watching tonight? But there's not life. There's problems in the world. There's problems in life. And I think you need to not get like completely wrapped up in it, but understand it, or at least go through some steps to understand it. If I've answered the question, that's a very long answer to what could have been a very simple question there. I apologize, but
do you not apologize? It's brilliant. It's brilliant. You know. So, cause I did ask you, and you answered the question I asked you. How do you deal with this? And you've answered it very, very well, actually. You've used great examples. About going to the gym as well, being sleeping properly, because you don't want to be approaching a scene with not being 100% on point, which is true. Okay, so tell me about your relationship with, tell me about Skyquaker.
Skyquaker. So Skyquaker is a really cool project. That's unfortunately with the lockdowns at the moment, it has been a little bit sort of placed on hiatus, I would say, and that we're trying to do our best to work remotely, but it's been all a little bit slow and whatever else. And the stages are closed because my next big thing was the stages. But Skyquaker, which is these guys, you can pick up these shirts, by the way, at Aurora Eclipse Productions.com. There's an array of merchandise for the guys there. But it started through our mutual contact and friend, Stephen Hope Wynn, who I met fixing his MacBook probably around 5 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago, and we just became friends instantly, really. And I was working for an Apple premium reseller as a tech engineer guy kind of thing, and I was out back, and this guy came out and he said, "Mike, there's this bloke out there, he's really eccentric, and he's going on about Pro Tools."
Eccentric. That's
eccentric,
Steve.
yeah, he's
Wow,
really eccentric, and
I love it.
he's yapping on about Pro Tools, and I don't understand it. And I'm like, Pro Tools? I was out there like a shot. So I couldn't fix this problem. He needed a new Mac. But it was one of those classic scenarios of like he'd updated his Pro Tools, which was then not compatible with his operating system, but his Mac couldn't go to that later operating system. Yeah. So he made himself obsolete for updating his software, unfortunately, and whatever else. And he didn't want to go, being Steve, he didn't want to go backwards. Steve always wants to go forwards, right?
Yeah.
So we ended up in the pub, and it kind of started as like a conversation around film and music, and kind of similar to what we're doing here, really. To be honest, the conversation was fairly similar, and Steve's kind of experience as an actor and his experience as a musician. And then that I did some work as a mix and master engineer for him through a friend at the time he was working for, called Claire Estelle. She produced 2 tracks that Steve was also on, and they basically just wanted to come to a place that had, we could all sit down with big monitors, and they were working very much off laptops at the time, so they came to me, which I appreciated, and we mixed and mastered those tracks. And I think during that time, Steve kept saying, like, I've got this project, Mike, I really want you to work on this Skyquaker project. And I kind of kept saying, yeah, mate, okay, I'll have a look at it. But I was busy I was doing things. And I got kind of, at one point I got very into the mixing and mastering world. And then I was pitching for ages for trailer and stuff like that. And he kept sending me demos of stuff he'd done that were very rough, and if I'd actually spent the time to listen to them with more of a, oh wow, what could we do with this enthusiasm, I would have picked up the project a lot earlier. So I suppose about 2 years back, I just said to him, all right, mate, let's do it. I like what you're doing. Let's do it. And we kind of Steve started getting, at the same time he found Ben 34, the guitarist, and it kind of started with just those 2 guys. They were writing tracks, and then Steve kind of being Steve managed to find like Talisa York for the saxophone. You met George McFarlane at Echo 7, who then kind of we got Simon Cohen involved, and then we found Rue Saville, and we built up this whole kind of entourage, I suppose, of session musicians. And around that time, Aurora was growing as well into a bit more of a label. It's been very, very fast growing. I think we released the debut single Queen Kong November, just over a year ago now, so that was about 12 months ago. So the first single went out. Again, great artwork by my mate Richard Jaxley on that. And then we did Thank God for Rock and Roll some sort of 5-6 months later. If it wasn't for the lockdowns, we'd be looking for an album release, and we'd be putting the guys on the stage. Yes. Because that's the problem. That's the problem with it, is Skyquaker really at its core is a rock band. They do a lot of fusion. You yourself, Dav, are on the track 5 Claw. I think Steve's vision and then how you executed that are superb. So I'm really excited to unleash that on the world, if you like. But at their core, they are a rock band, and it's very difficult in this day and age to just you can have the best sounding track in the world, mastered at Abbey Road, recorded by, like the ghost of George Martin or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And you put it in the iTunes store and it still won't get any plays. It's like you need that kind of marketing, and you need, like, if everybody on social media posted out about it, everyone kept sharing it, and you hit the right people, sure, you can go viral. But that viral attitude is it's like winning the lottery, really, mate, in my opinion. That everyone's writing tracks or doing a podcast or doing whatever else. What we need for Skyquaker is the stage.
Yeah.
Once we've got the stage, like, we can then get the fans, we can then start selling the merch, we can then start pressing the CDs, we can start, well, I'm going to be doing vinyls more than CDs. I mean, does anyone, let me know, guys, does anyone buy CDs anymore? Like, let me know, tell me, comment for me. Yeah, it's one. So Skyquaker, really, for rock music, we need the stage. But it's a very exciting project. I mean, we've got Mike Garson, who is David Bowie's pianist, playing on a couple of the tracks. A really great array of session musicians that I'm incredibly proud of to have met and to have worked with. From trumpets to sax, drums. Obviously, Ben is an amazing guitarist. George on the bass. And we got a really cool, yourself as well producing, me adding some strings and different arrangements. I think my claim to fame on Queen Kong is the tambourine. I added the tambourine and some piano notes, so I'll get my 2% royalty on that. But yeah, I think it's I'm really excited for Skyquaker, but it is just one of those. There's a little bit of a limbo situation that we've all kind of mutually agreed at the moment. Let's just take our time with it, in terms of getting the album ready, and then but be ready for when we can go live. And then that chapter, I hope, should grow quite fast.
I'm looking forward to the release of Five Claw. I've put a few pictures up which are on. You won't see them yet because you're the victim here regarding the interview. The subject, the talent. So but there's a picture of you right now standing near a huge tank, which is very very. Well, you won't see.
Okay.
But,
cause
yeah. But the thing is, you'll see it on the playback, and I love Steve. Like, I love his energy, his perception on life. It's just. When he phones you, like he makes me laugh because the way he is, and I'm blessed to have him in my life as well. So I think I met Steve where I was working for Love Asia Radio, and I think we had to go to the I swear it was at the House of Commons or something, or there's some sort of media event, and I saw him there, and we just got on, and so yeah. I'm honored. So the way this project's come about has been very very superb. Mike, I wanted to ask more about Queen Kong and Vladimir Butovsky, and because at the end of the song, he basically says that people in the West are basically asleep. Yeah. Could you elaborate a bit more on that?
So, what you'll find, or what I've found, and I find this to be very true, is that we're not like anything I know about totalitarian regimes has been discovered post school. I didn't go to college, so I can't say post college, and post uni. I skipped college somehow, managed to get whatever, but we aren't taught the sort of the full. We're not given the full picture anymore. About such subjects. So when it comes to Vladimir Bukovsky, who was a Soviet era dissident of the USSR, what he's saying is that quote you're referring to is that in the West we just don't want to know. We're sleepwalking away from our freedom, and that kind of is the same as what I was talking about earlier about people not wanting to know about these darker sides of life, and they're just Netflix, just eat 2 beers, don't talk to me. I think that's kind of what he's talking about, and I find myself whenever I start talking about totalitarianism or and a lot of, unfortunately, the repeats I'm seeing currently in the world, we are in many ways repeating the 20th century, just under a different sort of technocratic guise. Wow. And in my opinion, you're already seeing if you just look at the social media landscape at the moment with the censorship that's going on, where regardless of what you think of Mr. Donald Trump, you know, a tech company cannot ban a president from its platform. And when you look at what's going on in I can't remember unfortunately the country off the top of my head, but if you watch The Social Dilemma, which is a Netflix documentary by a chap called Tristan Harris, he'll show you that there is one area of the world in the developing world where people are getting phones, you know, and these phones have got Facebook on them, and it's like it's free to use Facebook. You have to pay to use the wider web, and then you're set up on Facebook when you get this phone, and the government straight away are sort of pushing propaganda to your phone, and it's actually led to like genocide, you know, and these sorts of things. And it seems Facebook, I mean, I may have misquoted that slightly, but if you watch the documentary, it's in there. There's also a 3-hour long format conversation with Tristan Harris on the Joe Rogan Experience for anyone who, I recommend you check that out. But you're seeing a lot of kind of big tech that are basically acting like, well, you can't walk around, you can't start silencing people or removing big platforms or trying to dominate the kind of world in the way that they're doing. And a lot of this stuff I'm seeing around COVID, you know, like we're essentially, and from what I can see, is living in like a police state. You know, it's just been announced yesterday that Germany are now, you know, creating camps for COVID dissidents. I mean, I've heard that before, if you understand what I'm saying. You know, to me, this is sounding very nefarious, you know, that you can be taken from your home for being a dissident and put into a camp. These sorts of things. So I think what Vladimir, there's a few dissidents I know of. Vladimir is one, another is Yuri Bezmenov. Bezmenov was warning in the 80s in America about you know, subversion from the old sort of KGB USSR model on the West in terms of our culture, and the top of the list of their documents was removing Christianity, which if you do a clear analysis of Christianity in the West, it's quite an interesting case study just on that one point. So I won't elaborate much past that. So yeah, well, Vladimir was warning essentially us against, you know, look, you've got this democratic system, but it can be corrupted, and you know, like corporatism's come in, which is, there's a big difference between your capitalism and your corporatism. They're two very different things. They get confused, but they're different things. So I think it's yeah, that's kind of Queen Kong started because Stephen was kind of upset by what was happening in Hong Kong. The way that the Hong Kong people were sort of being treated by mainland China and the CCP, and Hong Kong's a strange conversation really, because they do essentially have British values in Hong Kong. It is we kind of went over there, started it, handed it back, and there was supposed to be a treaty of 50 years where they could work out what was going to happen with that, and it's not really being honoured. So Steve just kind of did a song. Kind of commenting on what was happening in Hong Kong, and he was doing some research into Wei Jingsheng, yeah, who was a Chinese dissident who and he got put in the gulag essentially for writing on a wall. You know, he he went to a wall and you know, wrote that he disapproved of the regime, and they put him in prison for that for like 20-30 years. And Vladimir was friends with Wei Jingsheng, so the link to Vladimir was kind of connected there, and Stephen through some mutual contacts actually knew Vladimir.
Wow. Wow.
And I mean, I went to his funeral unfortunately when he passed away at the end of 2019, which was an honor to be invited to. You know, and hear about his life and the things he went through. I mean, him himself, I think it was either between 13 and 20 years he spent in various gulags and camps and under the USSR. So Stephen interviewed him, one of the last interviews to have gone out about his time.
Yes.
And at the same time, we were talking about Sleep for a Sleep concept album that I had, which I'm currently doing now. So that's kind of that's my current project. Is I'm doing this, and it's kind of weird. It's this situation we're currently in, where everybody's kind of asleep, right? We're in these this suspended animation, if you like, where people like me and you are, of course, doing interviews, and we're trying to stay connected.
Yeah,
But it's not the same, right, as actually meeting people. So I feel like merging the kind of this sleep concept album that I had, which was going to be essentially looking at the different brain waves your head goes through, if you like, your brain experiences, alpha, theta, delta, different brain waves that your head actually goes through while you sleep into REM, which is when you properly sleep. Sleep is so important. It's quite crazy. I didn't know this, but I only found this out 2 days ago. When you sleep and you're in REM, your frontal, what's it called? The front, your frontal cortex.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Couldn't speak for some reason then.
It's fine.
Frontal cortex, which is basically your logic and your kind of like guide of, is this crazy or not, gets turned off. So your brain you're essentially kind of psychotic when you're in REM. You're delirious and you're all over the place. And I didn't know this, but if a person's an alcoholic and they're drinking alcohol constantly, your brain never gets into that REM stage where it processes all these thoughts and goes through this kind of defragmentation process. So when you talk about an alcoholic who gets DTs,
yes.
I thought DTs was essentially due to alcohol withdrawal. It's not. What it is it's where the brain has been starved for so long of this process it needs to go through. It forces you through it while you're asleep, so you become delirious. And I can't remember what it stands for, DTs. I don't know whether you could bring it up. It stands for something delirious tremors or something, delirious tremors or something like that. Or anyone listening could perhaps look into it. I don't have the information, unfortunately, off the top of my head. I do apologize. So I found that quite interesting, that all these things around sleep and the kind of the processes that your brain needs to go through, and the misinformation around that as well, that your brain will actually it saves up this information of how starved it is of information.
You're right. It was delirium tremens. Yes.
Delirium tremens, and so that's your brain putting you through what it would go through in REM while you're awake.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
And I didn't know that, and it's like it's made me think twice about that. That I've been a big fan of like the nightcap. Finish the studio, have like not a couple of whiskeys kind of thing, and then get good sleep. It's like I don't think I'll be doing that anymore.
Wow.
So yeah, that's tailed into some crazy mental answer to your question there, Dav.
No, bro,
but I think it's
perfect.
It's kind of
real.
this is how mental I am, I suppose, at the moment. The level of research I'm going into. I'm reading up about communism, fascism, looking at what's happening in the world, looking at these camps and trying to understand what these people went through, and tying that into sleep deprivation, and kind of linking that back to poor sleep experiences I've had as a younger man. I actually sleep relatively well now, but for a period of time I didn't, and sleep paralysis and all these kind of things, collective consciousness, and I'm trying to kind of use this opportunity to sort of basically make this crazy, basically score a dream.
Wow. Yeah. I love it. I love the way you said that. That's gangster. Score a
dream, literally. And it's quite, but the problem is it's quite disturbing. I almost don't want to put it out.
No, man, do it. At the end of the day, that's we should enjoy these powers that we have of creativity, because you know what's going to happen. Sooner or later, we might even have to apply for licenses to work out art, to do that.
This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying, mate. I'm very, very concerned about, and when I talk about this big tech censorship as well, it's like you see it all the time where someone will take a video clip and then they'll edit it, and it's clearly edited. They're taking the piss. Yet Twitter feel like they've got to put this footage has been edited. It's like, well, yeah, of course it has. It's obviously been edited, or like this is widely disputed, or this is fact checked. I think we spoke about this in our last podcast. It's like, don't baby me, dude. This is a platform. I'll make my own mind up. If something's foolish, I'll call the guy a fool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like and that it kind of, it's a very easy way of shutting things down, of changing facts and changing. There's this funny guy on YouTube called Awaken with JP, and he literally is a piss taker, and he's done this video where he's ripping into the fact checkers, and it's like, you know, his wife comes home. His wife's clearly asked him to do the washing up before she comes home. So she comes back into the property, and he's there with this massive pile of plates in front of him, like stinking to high heaven and mess everywhere, yeah? And she's like, I thought you were going to do the washing up. And he's like, the washing up is done. I fact-checked it. Yeah, it's right in front of his brain box.
Oh, my God.
And I feel like that's a quite interesting, through comedy, comment on what's going on in the world now. It's like there's something that's... You look at the mainstream media, and there's something on the screen which doesn't represent the words that are being said to the images, but people are believing the words and ignoring the images. And I don't understand this. I don't get it. People. Well, like Vladimir, coming back to Vladimir, people are asleep. Well, people are asleep.
They are.
They don't want to know.
I was gonna hit you with a quote again, because you know I'm a big fan of Dennis Wheatley and the Letter to Posterity.
You do love a bit of Dennis Wheatley, don't you, mate?
Yeah. I'll give you a slight quote from the letter. We are sent into this world to develop our own personality, to use such gifts as we have been given, and to set an example to others by our courage, fortitude, sympathy and generosity, and self-reliance. Any state which controls the lives of the people and dictates where they shall live, what work they shall do, what they shall see, say, hear, read and think, thwarts the free development of personality and is therefore evil.
Well, I couldn't. Thank you for that, because it summed up everything I've just said.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I feel. It's like, I think there clearly needs to be a system of bad ideas, and perhaps one way about going about that would be, say, if someone comments something abhorrent, you know, maybe it gets downvoted, and then when a certain percentage of people downvote it, maybe the comment gets hidden, but it's still present. It's not deleted. It's still there.
Yeah.
Maybe that could be a way of dealing with this situation. But then even the problem with that analogy is, it's like, I just find people are operating on such a... I mean, this sounds so big-headed to say it like this. But I can't think of another way of saying it. But I just find people are operating on what I would call a very shallow, surface level way of thinking. They're not thinking deeply. They're not considering with deep thought and having that really like penetrable conversation with your brain about, what do I really think about this particular subject. You know, but I think we did have these conversations at one point, and we did, you know, even if you watch a chat show from the 70s, like, you know, on YouTube or something, just the way people spoke to each other seemed to be more intelligent. It wasn't focused on glam or
That's right. Yeah.
It wasn't. It was about ideas, and now it doesn't seem to be about ideas. It's all very... Do you know what I mean? That's my perspective on it at the moment. Anyway, it's like there needs to be
dumbed down. We've been dumbed down. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely,
purely superficial, and you know, designer labels and all the rest of that, what have you. And
precisely, which is false idols, man.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very true. So, your favorite songs from other artists, and why?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. One track I always really liked, and it's weird. This is quite relevant because it's probably not my favorite Hans Zimmer track.
Yes.
But in terms of the way it makes me feel, it is. If that makes any sense. Yeah. And it's from, I think it's called A Way of Life, which is the opening track of the soundtrack to The Last Samurai,
Yes.
which is actually a film I didn't think hugely of, but it was entertaining enough, and I loved the soundtrack. There's just something about the way he's merged those kind of Japanese big taiko drums and the sort of Japanese I can't name them all off the top of my head now because I haven't looked at that world for a while, but the merging of those that instrumentation with the Western sort of overarching strings in that track is just phenomenal. It really does kind of I just love it. I think it's fantastic. So that track's always sort of stuck to my brain. Of course I could list many a tracks from Zimmer, but that one I will say. I think probably it's going to be like a Pink Floyd track, maybe kind of like Wish You Were Here or something like that. Just the way that the sax is balanced so well from a mix standpoint. I really do like the sort of Pink Floyd experimentation. And again, I'm not particularly huge on prog rock, but there's just something about that era of Floyd and the Wish You Were Here. Obviously it deals with the mental breakdown of Syd Barrett through his drug taking and his kind of endeavors in his life, which is obviously tragic, but it's also very real. But yeah, there's something about the lyrics to that song and the way that the music's been sort of treated, both sonically and and in terms of composition, is up there. Man, now I've got to choose a third track. This is hard, dude.
Sorry, dude.
This is hard, and it's like, there's so much music that I like. I mean, blimey, I've got to choose one, haven't I? You're not going to let me off the hook for this.
Nah, I'll let you off the hook if you want, bro. It's cool. It's cool.
It's like when someone asks you what's your favorite film, and it's like, well, how long's a piece of string, or it's like it changes all the time. Like, let me I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me open up my music, right? Because let's have a look what it says in here in terms of like they've changed this, man. I'm still not getting used to this new music, instead of iTunes.
Oh, I still think the actual that's the drug dealing ice cream van.
He's back.
Yeah.
He's back.
Yeah. I've got many theories in this guy, but it's going to rest on the fact that he has to keep hold of his ice cream run. That's why he's out in all weathers.
Brilliant.
We had the one where he works for the paedophile establishment and he's there scoping out the kids.
That's probably your darkest analogy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm going to say? And again, this is a track I've been listening to more recently, but the band Dead Can Dance, which features Lisa Gerrard, the Australian vocalist who was the vocalist on Gladiator.
Yeah.
There's a track on there called Amnesia, which is almost like a dub reggae style track. She's not singing on it. It's the male counterpart to the band. That track I love that track. It's got something about the energy in that track. Man, there's so much, man. It's like, like the Show Must Go On's been in the playlist by Queen a lot lately because I think it's relevant to COVID. And the arts and things like that, and there's just so. I mean, modern artists. I really like Lana Del Rey. Not so much her latest album, but her earlier stuff I thought was great. A real marriage of sort of easy listening, but in a cinematic way with the strings. I liked I like her approach. I think she's a good artist. Is Del Rey. So I could go all over the place, mate. It's, start talking about Marvin Gaye or Michael Jackson or BB King. Like
it's cool.
I like Ravi Shankar. It's like yeah.
The only time you'll ever see me getting slimmer, right? Besides going to see the
drug dealing ice cream van.
The drug dealing ice cream van. Oh no. I apologize. It's basically when I'm either saving up for or just purchased a really slightly bit of studio gear. So I thought about what you were saying. So Hans Zimmer had the famous quote, if it was a choice between a car or a Mini Moog, it was a choice between a car and a Mini Moog, and I still don't drive. Hans Zimmer. So, what's next on your purchase list? For the studio, do you think?
So, I still think it's coming back to that really this. You asked me this one before, and it's not changed too much in terms of like I do actually want a piece of gear that takes me away from the computer. So I'd like to put like a digital piano or something there, or a modular synth that I can perhaps build and work on. So I learn a little bit more about electronics and building my own gear. I mean, I did do electronics at school, which I loved.
Yeah.
But I've never really applied that to kind of the audio field. I've just bought a ton of stuff for Aurora Cast in terms of microphones, and I bought like the Zoom H6, which is a portable recorder with like 4 XLR inputs and a stereo recorder. And obviously it's battery powered, so now I've got the capability to take that out wherever and
brilliant
and record wherever I can. So I suppose that's been the biggest recent purchase was that Zoom recorder. There are a couple of libraries out there from Orchestral Tools, which I'd like to pick up just to kind of bring my orchestral. I feel like they just need to perhaps come up a little bit more up to date now, especially if I'm starting to pitch for trailer again. And there is a library, I think it's called Tundra by Spitfire, which is string players playing on the edge of silence. So
wow.
it's like they're playing so lightly that that's what it's marketed as, is they're on the edge of silence, which interests me greatly, because it's like I think there's something about that. I think there's going to be something about the tones there, especially when they get into harmonics where they're playing that delicately, which will just talk to me from a textual standpoint. So I'm interested in that conceptually. So yeah, I think definitely some sort of outboard, maybe a Mini Moog or a Micro Brute, or some sort of dirty synth. I don't need one, but I would like to get some sort of outboard compressor. Just I don't know why. I just would like. I'd like a humble rack, where perhaps I've got like a decent sort of standalone preamp, maybe a DBX compressor. Doesn't have to be mad expensive. I think you can pick up a DBX 160 for like 200 quid. Just having like that capability and a little bit of a patch bay, just to sort of experiment, and again I think it's coming back to what we were talking about earlier about creativity. It's like just things that take you out of this computer, that you have to go over there and mess around with some sounds, and you hear it differently. And like a lot of the time, I was doing it this morning, I'm listening to something, but I close my eyes because I feel like this can kind of distract you from when you're looking at the sequencer in real time. There's something about the way your brain and your ears correlate that I personally find distracting.
Yeah.
Like if I know there's a crossfade in a piece of audio, and I can see the playhead go past the crossfade, it's like I can hear it's like not perfect, but it is. But because I know there's a crossfade there and visually it's there,
yes,
I kind of psychosomatically put it's not there. Does that make sense?
It does. Of course, yeah, of course. It makes sense. Such as the what was that old the experiment where they put the words on the screen and it's some sort of weird experiment where you actually, even though I don't know where I'm going with it, but I kind of know in my head what's going on. But it's your visuals can basically affect what you perceive in
weird.
Yeah, it's very, very weird. So my version of it, to address the getting away from the screen thing, because there's 4 screens here in the studio, I thought, do we go doorless? You know what I mean? So we thought, shall we get I looked at Korg's SQ64. I thought I'll pick one of those up and see how we'll just do the sequencing of the MIDI work in that, or we've got to be honest, we've got the internal sequencer built into the Korg M3 over here. There's also Arturia's Beatstep Pro, which which look very, very good. They've got that in a black version. I thought I'll pick one of those up on eBay for 150, 160 quid. But ultimately, like I told you, I ended up spending the money on that carbon paint. So I'm in a better environment because ultimately don't be bombarded. But slutty gear wise, right? Blackline Audio. I've just released their new interface, right?
Okay.
And it's been a long thing that I've had for like 10 years to say that I'm going to send over my RME Fireface 800, that trusty, lovely old workhorse there. Never ever let me down once. And next thing you know, it just blows up. But
So it's just, I've got a wooden table here, mate. We'll touch wood on it.
Yeah, touch wood on it, man. But it's never ever failed me once, right? I was gonna send it over to them to mod. Now, what they will do, they'll decouple this, that, and the other, and modify things. But for them to release an interface called the Revive 2x2, I shot them an email yesterday for I'll review it, and I've got a feeling I'll end up buying it because I'm really, really into high end or great signal chains and converters and stuff like that. So that's on my purchase list. And yeah, I am going to enter the world of Eurorack and building my own sort of synth bits and putting them together. Have a great understanding of VCO, VCAs, and all the rest of that, filters and stuff. So I think it's great. So that segues me nicely into we spoke about libraries for building the soundscape. So I think you really want to. I think you're getting into, or you're into sound design, actually designing a sound in a synthesizer. So how would you go about doing that? Do you start with the raw sort of waveforms?
So it's an interesting question, and what I did when I was at uni was we I can't remember the piece of software to save my life, but you could get a free version of like a modular synth in terms of a software version. And you'd literally build, like, it looked crap, it looked awful, this bit of software, man. But you'd start with your oscillators, and then you could add your filters, you could add your envelopes, you could add all your LFOs, you could really get into it to kind of a bit like, Propellerhead's Reason had a really great interface, and I think Korg they had an app on the iPad back when I had an iPad before I gave it away, where you could kind of move the cables and plug them into different things, and it worked really well. But what I did when I was at uni, because I thought it made sense, was I tried to kind of take a Vangelis approach, in terms of like mocking up an orchestra, like making a horn sound. So I'd analyze the sound of a horn, like the air, taking into account the breath, and then the sound comes out into the room. What's the decay? How does the sound kind of dissipate? How does it disappear? So I created like a horn sound using this crappy bit of software. I'm going to need to go back into my notes and remember what that was.
Was it ugly looking, but it's very, very functional?
It was functional, but it just looked awful. It looked terrible, mate. It looked awful.
I'm not going to say any names, but I think I know what it is. Yeah.
Okay.